Still, I have a news desk with me, Daniel Dazi. It's been a little over 7 months since governments placed the ban on small-scale mining. The move, a bold attempt to halt the destructive effects of illegal mining on the environment and the country's water bodies, has already yielded positive results, with some of the water bodies previously browned out with mud now clearing up. JoyNews in Athalia Kwanza visited Wassa Akropong in the western region, also known as Wassa Shanghai, and reports, though there is general support for government's resolve to correct the wrongs of illegal mining, the local economy there has been so terribly impacted, life is almost snuffed out of a once booming city.
The sound of noisy excavators and grinding machines was the sort of welcome handed visitors to Wassa Akropong, Ghana's Galamsey capital town, some 7 months ago, as the artisanal miners milled hard stones and rocks into powder so they could extract the precious metal gold. The gold rush was just the preserve of the indigents here. It pulled people from all over the country and the West African sub-regions, as well as some from beyond Africa. Of those who came from beyond the continent, the Chinese were the most dominant. The growing numbers over time brought pressure on the limited social amenities available. But the visitors quickly put their money to work, putting up buildings to provide housing and establishing their own market without having to turn to central governments. Restaurants, hotels, and pubs were built and businesses were booming, and along with it, devices that came with prosperity. Prostitution, high crime rates, and alignments which previously did not exist. Some 7 months on, and the story is very different here at Wassa Akropong, the district capital of Amenfi East in the western region, about 3 hours drive from the regional capital by road. The town is quiet, almost like a cemetery. Businesses are no longer brisk. The noisy excavators and grinding machines have all gone silent. The dust has settled, and though the shops are opened, there are very few shoppers, and nightlife is more of quiet life now. Frank, once an active miner, says life in the town is not what it used to be.
Positively, I think the government has done well, but the way you think is not the way other people think. You understand? Because it has been their livelihood and there was a ban on it. You understand? So people do not have alternative. And regulation since January last year, you understand? People have been in this hassle for a very long time. We are praying government to come early with such regulation and solutions so that people can work.
On the outskirts of Wassa Akropong, one of the pits from where the gold was mined is now overgrown with weeds, having been abandoned in the last 7 months of the ban. For now, it remains a death trap as it is yet to be reclaimed. Less than a kilometer from the abandoned Galamsey site sits idle the heavy equipment used by illegal miners. For 1,800 cedis, they could be available for one's use for 8 hours. About 100 of them, though, are wasting away.
Our job was to repair faulty vehicles belonging to Galamsey operators. Now that it's been banned, we've also become jobless.
After the processing and all the pure gold gets to dealers like Sami and the hundreds of dealers who have opened offices here at Wassa Akropong, he tells me his earnings have shrunk significantly since the ban.
I have been unable to pay my workers. I hold a higher national diploma, but I entered into this business because I couldn't find any job. This is how I am able to feed my family and provide for those I work with. Some of the boys who are no longer working because of the ban may start stealing from others. We are pleading with government to, as a matter of urgency, provide alternative livelihood for the youth.
Back in the town, traders at the market share similar stories. Most of the sheds here have been abandoned.
Since the ban on galamsey, sales have declined. We are unable to repay loans. The collapse of galamsey has really affected business.
In Athalia Kwansa, Joy News, Wassa Akropong.
Interesting scenes there from Wassa, Shanghai, as it's known now. This is the first of two reports. The second part will look at the impact on nightlife. Joining us via Skype is the Executive Director for Center for Social Impact Studies, who's done some work on illegal mining, small-scale mining, and on the gold sector in general, Richard Kojo Elema. Thank you very much, sir, for your time.
You're welcome.
Now, you have done so much studies into this field, particularly when this fight against galamsey began. Is this something that will come as a surprise, or looking at how developments came along, this was inevitable?
Well, it is not entirely surprising. Normally, in any area which develops as a result of galamsey, the economy of that area is transient. That is, you see the economy booming at a point because of the emergence of the galamsey activities in the area. And then at the point in time when the activities of galamsey goes down, the economy also takes a dip. So what is happening is a normal cycle in any galamsey community.
So with the way that in the initial fight against galamsey, we're saying that it's because some of these communities depend on galamsey that the authorities might even find it difficult enforcing the law. Now that this has happened, do we have any danger of, going back into the community accepting these galamseyers, allowing them to operate?
Well, I think that the creative way of managing the problem is to regularize the activities of some people who want to go into galamsey legally. I understand when you go to Wassa Akropong, there are people who want to do the small-scale mining legally. There are actually some small-scale mining companies operating there legally. They've acquired their concession and they are operating legally. So the way to go for communities like Wassa Akropong and others that depend on illegal mining is for government to go ahead and then register as many people as possible who want to have a concession so that they can do their mining legally. And secondly, we need to also regulate their activities. And in this regard, we want the Minerals Commission and the EPA to go in and then regulate their operations so that whilst we are enjoying the economic benefit of the small-scale mining in the communities, we will not get to a situation where they will also pollute the environment and then negate all the economic advantages. So the way to go in the long term is for us to begin a process of regularizing the operations of all those who want to do small-scale mining legally. For me, that holds a better potential for the local economies.
Right. You speak of beginning a process of legalizing these small-scale miners and also of regulating them. Do you think that the EPA, the Minerals Commission, as it's positioned now, is ready to do this intensive regulation that is required?
Yes, by law, these are the two main bodies that do regulation of the mining sector. And if you get there, we have some of the best brains, some of the best experts who have been trained both home and abroad to regulate the sector. All we need to do is to support them with the finances, to support them with the logistics, and also expand their operations so that they can be everywhere in this country where we have these menace of galamsey. As at now, it appears we have bypassed these institutions, and then we've gone ahead to set up this Operation Vanguard, pumping all the resources into Operation Vanguard, which for me is only a temporary measure. The more permanent measure is that why don't we rechannel all these resources to support the Minerals Commission and the EPA so that they can employ a lot more people who can go to the field, regulate the operations of these miners in order not to pollute the environment.
Now, you seem to focus a lot of your answering into the mining sector and the gold sector, but already we know that Ghana and Africa is sort of over-dependent on natural resources like gold, so that since independence, gold has been our prime export product. Shouldn't it be time that we look at, creating other income streams, other growth poles in these areas apart from the same old natural resources?
Sure. I totally agree with you. If you go to Wassa Akropong, for instance, it's predominantly a cocoa farming area. So what have we done with the cocoa farming? I mean, that is what we need to understand. Secondly, our research has indicated that a lot more farmers are giving up their farms to these miners. So there is a general preference for mining in these communities, which totally I agree with you that it's not sustainable. So again, we need to go back to the drawing board and look at how to develop other growth pools apart from mining. So even dependence on gold alone is also a problem. We need to be looking at other minerals and how to develop those minerals to benefit the country. Apart from mining, we can also look at industries, setting up industries, adding value to agricultural produce, developing entrepreneurs in these areas, and making sure that they are not totally dependent on mining, like communities like Obuasi and others are suffering. So I totally agree with you. It is time for us to look at, demystifying the myth around mining and using it as a good tool. Mind you, we have used this strategy for the past 30-something years. In the 80s, that was when the World Bank and IMF asked us to promote mining as a catalyst for development. Okay. Over 30 years later, I believe it is time for us to take a second look at it as to whether the expectations of the growth pool of mining as a growth pool has really been met or not.
In your view, has it worked? In your view, has it worked?
I don't think so. If it has worked, then Obuasi wouldn't find itself in the kind of mess we find ourselves now. Because we've depended on mining for over 100 years. Only one mining company in the community, and then that mining company has a problem. Anglo-Gold Ashanti has a problem, and then the entire economy of the municipality collapses. That shouldn't be the case. We need to diversify and look at other areas. Even in terms of building human capacity, we need to be looking at building institutions at these communities. We need to support entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, to come up with IT solutions and so on. These are a more sustainable way of addressing the dependence on mining than this galamsey and the small-scale mining fight we are fighting.
Right. And finally, sir, before you take leave of us, looking at, and I asked this question a bit earlier, it wasn't so clear, looking at how communities are dependent on galamsey, is there a danger of the community members returning to that act in places like Wassa Akropong?
Very likely. It's very likely. And I wouldn't be surprised if on the blind side of the Operation Vanguard, we see these community members going back to the land and doing illegal mining. I keep saying that Operation Vanguard is only a stopgap measure. But once the soldiers are off the field, you expect that the communities will go back. So this will not be the end of the galamsey story as we know it. We have seen instances in the past. Remember that under President Kufuor, we had Operation Flashout. They operated for a few months, they went back to barracks, and then galamsey started. Under President Mahama, we had the Interministerial Task Force. They operated for a few months, they went back to barracks, and then it started. So there's always the likelihood that when the Operation Vanguard security officers go back to barracks, galamsey will rear its ugly head again. So we need to think through and then get a more permanent solution to the problem.
Thank you so much, Richard Kojo-Elima, for joining us this morning. He's the Executive Director for Center for Social Impact Studies. You're still watching News Desk. I am Daniel Dazi. There's more coming up after this.